I don't invest from overflow. Investing actually is what creates the overflow. So I don't need to wait until I have all this liquidity or all these things in order to start investing. It's like, nah, I need to start investing now because that's actually what gets me to the overflow in my cup. Is taking those healthy risks now and realizing at the end of the day, I'm going to come out on top.
All right, guys, welcome back to Wealth Within Reach. I'm your host, Erika Brown, and today y'all are in for a treat because you have not one, but you have two Erikas today. I would love to introduce you to my friend, my business,
Sister business, friend, sister in entrepreneurship.
I feel like I've known her for years, but we literally only met this year. We started working together, but we met and had dinner and we just hit it off. 10X business guru, trailblazer, 10X multiple times, more than a boss. Like I said, Dr. EJT, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here.
I'm so excited. I absolutely adore you and adore this conversation. So I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. So today, y'all, we are talking all about overcoming scarcity mindset. My gosh. And it's a journey. I know I'm still on that journey, but man, I am so inspired by your story. And Erika started out as a teacher, and I'm just inspired about we were just talking the other day. You were like, man, I run a 7-figure business and I've been full-time for 2 years.
Right.
Like, wow. So anyways, so much to jump into. First, I just would love to talk about, if you could just share, what was you were a teacher? Share just a quick recap of your journey and what got you where you are today.
Yeah. So at my core, I'm an educator. So my career started in education. My very first job out of undergrad I was a high school math teacher, specifically algebra 2 and geometry. So yes, I'm smart. Someone was like, high school math. I'm like, yeah.
Girl, I barely passed geometry.
Say again.
I barely passed geometry.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that was my favorite. And in my head, because I taught geometry, I know how to play pool really well. Because there's all angles. It's just all angles on a table.
This is true.
Don't ask me to play pool. But I started off as a high school math teacher and absolutely fell in love with what I was doing, fell in love with my kids, so much so that I was like, I'm not satisfied with just teaching 30 kids at a time. And the max, if you got 4 classes is 120. I want to be impacting thousands of kids at a time. So I got clear. It was year 2 of teaching that I wanted to be a principal.
Wow. That's fast.
Very fast. You know how we do in your 20s. Where it's just we're just there's no limitations.
Yes.
You can do any and all the things. You really don't follow rules. Because I look back on a lot of the things I did in my 20s and I was like, I was bold out here in these streets. And she's still kind of bold, but
No, yeah. You bold. But I can tell, this is where it came from.
Yeah. And so I went on to be a principal. My career was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then year 2 of being a principal, to make a very long story short, there were some changes happening at the district level that were going to impact my school to the point where I had to make a really heartbreaking decision to not return the following year because I was like, I don't feel like this is going to be the same place. I feel like this decision is being done to a community rather than with a community. I feel like by staying, that's co-signing on this decision and this process. And I just morally don't feel like I can stay. So I didn't know what I was going to do next. So I was like, well, let me start consulting because I knew some people who were doing it and I was like, this will help me make some money as I try and figure it out. Yeah. At the same time, I applied to school. I was able to pay off all my credit card debt through my business, ended up going back to school, getting my doctorate from Harvard Graduate School of Education. And next thing you know, my business is just not only sustaining me, I'm making more money in my business than I was as a principal and I'm still in school full time. Wow. So I graduated 2 years ago and made the decision to go full time in my business. And it's just so wild because we were having this conversation of 2 years ago, it was me and a VA, and now I have a team of 6.
Now
we have
you
4
have like
employees.
whole employees, monthly payrolls
Girl.
to support families.
Yes. When some people are like, oh my goodness, I wonder if I'm scared to like make this investment in this. I'm like, that's my payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my pay. And it's not going to get smaller.
Every month.
Every month. And
not once a year.
And I mean, and to me, that's the expense that I take pride in, but also, as you know, it's at the end of the day, like I'm responsible for someone else, multiple people's salaries.
Right.
And so
like
that gives you a healthy pressure in the business to where I can't make excuses. I can't, be afraid of certain things because if I don't show up, then it's not a matter of just me not getting fed. It's other people don't get fed. So yeah, it's been a interesting journey and roller coaster for sure.
100%, 1000%. And, thank you for sharing that recap of where you are today from, being a teacher and making probably under $40,000.
$33,000.
Ooh, yes. To now having probably more than the $30,000, monthly payroll. So, okay. So I want to take you back to your teacher, and you are, you're at that moment where it's just like, you having to make that decision, and you're like, okay, what do you feel like? You're at that moment, you are a teacher, and you're thinking about making some kind of transition. Talk to me about some of the feelings and the thoughts that you used to feel that made it really difficult to like take the leap.
So I think there's a couple things. So first off, the first step of change. So anybody who's studied like change management or studied leadership, there is a framework called Kotter's 8 stages of change. So it basically talks about if you want to change anything, whether it's people, yourself, an organization, or whatever, here are the 8 steps to a change actually happening. And the very first step of change is creating a sense of urgency. And so for me as a educator, and at the time that I started my business, I was a principal. In order for me to have even thought of the idea of a business or to thought of something different, I have to have a reason to want to change my current reality. So there has to be some level of urgency that is going to propel me to do something different than what I'm already doing. And I think there's a little side note, but it's an important note. I think that's why a lot of people think they're struggling in business when really they're just comfortable. Like they haven't created a sense of urgency yet. Particularly if you're side hustling in your business, you have a level of comfort because you're still getting a check from your 9 to 5. So you have to manufacture your own urgency. And that can look like, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I have X, Y, and Z. Your urgency can come from your present or it can come from your future, right? And your present might be, I have these things that I'm tired of having to do. I'm tired of feeling nervous every time I get a something in the mail that looks like a bill. Because now this sum is like, well, I don't really have it. And I got to figure out how to pay it. So I get a little nervous. I would get nervous. I remember a time when I would put my card in the machine at the grocery store or out shopping or whatever. And the moment it was like more than 2 seconds.
You'll be like,
I was like, wait a minute, what's it getting ready to say? Like, wait a minute, what's happening?
Check that account real quick.
So I was like, whoop. But obviously, so it's, those things, I still have vivid memories of. And that was also a part of what was my level of urgency, and a part of, what I consider to be my rock bottom moment was I was a principal. We got paid once a month. I was underpaid and also was a human being with expenses. And I had a moment where I only had $50 until my next paycheck. And I was like, I just simply, it's too tight.
And you
I can't make it. And I was a principal, right? And which just speaks to how drastically underpaid we are. It's not that I was irresponsible with my money. The reality is we live in a country that we are not paid sufficiently, right? And in education, our pay does not reflect our impact. So I go to get a loan. I get in my car, drive to the spot to get the loan, sign for the check, get the check in hand, get in my car on the way to the bank to cash the check, and I run out of gas.
So here I am, the principal of a school of more than 1,000 kids. I manage a staff of over 100 people, and I am on the side of the road with no gas, less than $50 in my bank account with a check that I don't even have enough gas to cash.
That's crazy.
Right? And so for me, there was this sense of urgency. I was like, I cannot continue to do this. I'm in North Carolina and I got to call my mama in Columbus, Ohio to get her AAA to come and give me gas. And I'm a principal. Right? And so I was like, I cannot continue to do this. Something has got to change. And I think, and I didn't know it at the time, but I can articulate it now because my first strategy was let me budget. Wow. That was the first thing.
And I hate that because that's what your typical like white male personal finance gurus say. They immediately, take it back to you're being irresponsible with your money. You're spending too much money. You need to stop drinking the lattes. You need to stop doing XYZ. But, the cutting, $10 out of your budget is not going to make an impact, a big difference in you being able to be comfortable when that $1,000 bill comes at the end of the month.
Right. And I think to the point that you were, talking about and making, there's two ways to make money. You either save money to make more money or you make more money. Right? And oftentimes what we're taught in this society and disproportionately as people of color, disproportionately as women, disproportionately as Black women, is we are taught the main way to make more money is to save money. We're not having enough conversations around making more money. And so I think that's a huge part of when we're having the conversation of overcoming scarcity is you've got to believe more in your ability to make more money than you do in your ability to save money. Because the reality is when you are underpaid, savings can only get you so far. It's like you are trying to squeeze the juice out of a lemon and half the juice already gone to begin with. And so now it's get more lemons. Like just get more lemons, right? So I think that's a big piece around, for me and my story, that early stage of like, how did I decide to do something different? And what was that experience? It was like, I believe, you got to create a sense of urgency. And typically sense of urgency comes from some type of rock bottom moment. And that's different for everybody.
And sometimes for some people, I've known people who have been laid off. That's a rock bottom moment. Some people who have experienced divorce or separation. For me, it was just like I had a death in my friendship relationship. And then that triggered, okay, how do I want to give my time, to, and for me, it was just like, I really got tired of, I was also managing a team. I was also making almost 6 figures, doing well, climbing the ladder. But I was like, man, I felt so bad and so guilty when I would miss things in my kids' school. Like for me, it was I got tired of missing so much and not being able to control my time. And so at some point, and I tell people all the time, like, if you have something that is, this is a great example. Like, okay, so for years, at least 3 to 4 years straight, I have been, one of my goals, I'm a very goal-driven person, as you know, you are as well. One of my goals has been to consistently work out, work on my health. And it wasn't until actually 2021 when my dad passed away. He passed away, he had a tragic heart attack. And seeing someone, on, their deathbed, you see a whole life's worth of decisions, daily decisions that really come to play at that last part of your life. How your organs function is dependent on how you use your time day to day. And so it wasn't until experiencing that traumatic event that really, it really created a sense of urgency that I'm going to do whatever that I need to do to take care of my health and to take it seriously so that whatever is in my control, I can prevent my kids from having to do the same. And so that sense of urgency is so real that you speak about, that I feel like everybody, we're going through that in some way or the other. So yeah, I love that. I love that for you. So now let's talk about one of the things you talked about, scarcity. And for some of us, we have, we went to college, we're high income earners, we have, worked on our credit, We have built up a little nest egg in our savings, and we're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore, right? And we have, I guess we really done better than, the previous generation before us. Even more, I found that we have an even harder time with scarcity because we ain't got no inheritance to lean back on.
Right.
We don't have no trust to pull from once a year if the ish goes down.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that for people who are in that scenario that are trying to figure out, how do I grow my money? How do I create this healthy balance with, growing money, with also stewarding what I have well, so that I can work on my mindset and be able to take it even further?
Yeah. So I feel like this is so many conversations that you and I have, because it's interesting, because I feel like there's stages to the mindset work.
Yes.
That are, in relationship to your revenue. But then I think there's nuances to it depending on whether or not you came from money.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so I feel like, when you're trying to establish your revenue and you're growing your business, scarcity looks like you have a tight grip on money.
Yes.
Where it's like literally I'm envisioning like a fist.
It's all I got.
Where it's like, this is all I got. And I'm like penny pinching. And we often think about money can't go out, but also when you have a fist, it can't come in either, right? And so I think about that's what scarcity looks like when you're at that early stage trying to build your revenue, that you have to do your mindset work around, is being able to get strategic with your investments to allow money to flow in.
Right.
Then the stage that we're now talking about is, all right, I got stuff flowing in.
Right.
But how does scarcity show up? And we've had conversations around this of I believe now in this stage where I'm not struggling to pay my bills, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, but because I didn't grow up with money as an overflowing source of power or overflowing asset, there's still, messages that I'm operating and making decisions from. And I think in this stage, the level of awareness has to be around, how do you take risk and what do you define as a risk? So I think this stage of you made money, you're not living paycheck to paycheck, how you define as what's risky is actually the way scarcity shows up, or scarcity is influenced. So I'll give you an example, because you've actually helped push me a lot in this, in the real estate side, is as someone, and I've even owned my title now as an investor, because, I was like, in my head, I was like, in order to be an investor, I needed like a whole portfolio. I need a whole little list. And you were like, Erika, you're like, do you have a property? I was like, yes. Are you receiving funds from that, income from that? I was like, yes. She was like, okay, you are an investor. I was like, okay. And then you invited me to a conference for investors. And, I was like, well, let me fill out the room. This is the first time I've been to this conference. And as I'm talking to folks, and again, this all goes back to like how we see ourselves and, being comfortable with being a beginner. But there are folks in there talking big.
Yeah,
real big.
Real
and then I'm
big.
like, oh, okay, so how many properties do you have? They're like, oh, well, I have one in Florida. And I was like, oh, you got one? I was like, let me get myself together. Okay.
This chick over here talking real big.
She talking real big and got one Airbnb in Florida. I was like, okay, so for the record, she has, as of today, she has 3 properties.
Yes.
But part of the conversation that I think has pushed me in redefining risk and my relationship with you is, as still someone who's gaining a lot of knowledge in the real estate space and investing, I was very hesitant to take risk. And what was I defining as a risk? So for me, like, it was a flip felt risky because I've never done a flip before, or, something that was out of a state or a location where I've never lived felt risky. Yes. And so by being proximate to someone like you and the experience that you had, and just hearing the way you talk around, okay, well, this property, you could get it to cash flow if you consider this loan product, or if you were to, you could do traveling nurses, or you could you were like given all these options, and it's like, oh, wait a minute.
I have options. This is, yeah.
Not only does she have options, but now this feels less risky because I have options. And so I think that's a part at this stage of managing and dealing with scarcity. It's particularly if you didn't come from money, you're building your knowledge in a lot of different ways, and you have to build it really, really fast, particularly when it comes to investing and money and all those things, where it's like, okay, I've got to realize that I'm defining something as a risk, not because it's actually a risk. It's because I just don't know.
Because you don't have knowledge.
I don't have knowledge of it.
Right.
And or I'm seeing it as super narrow in terms of the options. I only have one of two options. But if I can think expansively about it, of just like, this can cash flow. Like if I approach every property, like it can cash flow. It's just finding out the strategy to get it to cash flow.
Right.
Do I got to talk the price down?
Right.
Do I have to get some owner's financing? Do they need to buy down points? Do I need to actually split up the rooms and rent by rooms versus doing a long-term tenant? Like there's multiple options, and our relationship has helped me see that. So I say all that to say is a part of, I think, the big mindset shift around scarcity and managing the relationship with scarcity. Because again, a part of the unlearning is when you didn't come from money, scarcity actually protected you. Right? Like it actually kept you safe because it is what allowed you to make it to the next paycheck, right?
Yes.
And now we have to unlearn that. We have to rewire that. And a part of at this level where I'm not pressed for resources. And this is a conversation I was just having of realizing the unlearning is I don't invest from overflow. Investing actually is what creates the overflow. So I don't need to wait until I have all this liquidity or all these things in order to start investing. It's like, nah, I need to start investing now because that's actually what gets me to the overflow in my cup. It's taking those healthy risks now and realizing at the end of the day, I'm going to come out on top. Like even if I don't cash flow for a few months, even if something
it's a long game.
I know how to make ish work.
Yes.
It's going to work.
Yes.
So.
And there's 11 ways to figure out how to make it work. One thing I love that I've learned with investing now that I teach my clients and I try to emphasize as much as I can with my community is exactly what you just said. It's like from a tangible standpoint. If we need to buy a new car, instead of me just shopping for a car and looking at my household budget and figuring out how much can we afford minus our salary and expenses, I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm going and looking on the MLS and seeing what properties can I find that create a certain type amount of cash flow that can pay for this car for me. Because the beautiful thing is, if I go the first route and I just take it from my salary, once that money is gone, it's gone. But the thing I love about real estate is that, real estate, the verse, God's mercies are new every morning. Real estate checks are coming every month. And so even when that car is paid off, because I have that cash flowing asset, it's going to continue to fund and cash flow my life in all sorts of ways. And so that's what working on the scarcity, that those limiting beliefs, all those things really does help to serve you long-term through real estate. And I love that. Oh, you said something that made me think about this quote. Cause you talked about how before you had the knowledge, there was a fear around risk, and how now increasing your knowledge has actually given you the confidence to understand that there's multiple types of options. And so now you don't feel like you don't have as much fear. The quote is, if your community is limited to just the people that you know, your dreams will be limited to the level of the people around you. This is why it's so important to get uncomfortable so that you can get comfortable and meet people and expose yourself to other people who are growth minded, who you admire, who you trust, who you just want to be friends with and learn from. Honestly, we learn from each other. Erika actually was the person who inspired and really encouraged me to host my conference. After going to the real estate conference we went to, she was like, this woman, she's like, Erika, What?
I was like, so when you doing your conference? Because I was like, this was but this wasn't for us.
Wasn't for us. Was not for us.
It was not for us.
Was not for us.
And there was a moment too where, I mean, I already knew you were dope,
right.
But it was
I'm like right.
Listen, right, period. And being able to, that was my first time being in a community of investors to where, I'm not in the spirit of comparison, but in the spirit of being able to see the landscape of investors. I don't know, I was like, these people in here talking big with this one Airbnb in Florida.
Right.
And I was like, Erika's running circles around more than 3/4 of this room with the portfolio that she has. And I'm like, yo, and that's who I want to learn from. Right. Because I don't learn from the person who got their down payment from their parents. Yeah. No. I'm not your target audience.
No.
Or you pulled your down payment for your 401k. I could do that now, but I couldn't do that when I started because 401k what?
Right.
And so I think that type of experience, I think that's why I felt so passionate around, like, because I could literally see it.
Literally talked me into this.
Where I was like, girl, you got to do a conference and just tell me the dates.
Right.
So I'm there.
Let me tell you about my upcoming event. Trust me when I tell you, you're going to want to hear this. It's time to step into a world beyond your typical real estate conference. Imagine walking into the room and you instantly find your people. I would like to introduce you to the Owning It and Living It experience. This is a 3-day unique experience that merges Black and Brown culture with real estate insights to help you think about building wealth in a different kind of way. This isn't just about making money, although we know how to do that. This is also about welcoming you into an environment where you feel seen, known, and safe. Join me for an unparalleled experience designed to help you both financially and empower you through the power of real estate. The Owning It and Living It experience is November 1st through 3rd at the Intercontinental Hotel in Atlanta. Yes, sis, we're in Buckhead. To learn more, go to owningitandlivingit.com or scroll down in the show notes and I'll see you there. We talked about going to that conference and how even just small things like, I want to do hotel investing. And it's like, okay, what got you into hotel investing? Well, I was introduced to this other guy who does hotel investing and he introduced me to a lender and now I'm a hotel investor. What the hell? I didn't even know you can, like, regular people can own hotels.
Right.
5 years ago.
Right.
And so I just feel like we need something for us.
Right.
That represents us, that speaks to us, that even addresses some of the things that we talked about today. Right. Yeah. I love that so much. Okay. So we met each other because you were a client before you became my friend. Okay. So what talk to me about your experience working with me as your coach and your experience, just your interactions with the community, the Owning and Living It community as a whole.
Yeah. So I want to go back to when I first knew of you.
Okay.
So
we were in a online community together.
Correct. Yes. And a lot of online communities, and this was one where it really wasn't specific to a particular business. Right. So there was, lots of different types of businesses in this online community. Yeah. And so when you had popped up and introduced yourself and you said you were a real estate investor and you help other people, with their real estate journey, I was like, oh, there are people who are investors. There's not a lot of people who are teaching other people how to do it. And I was like, oh, and she Black? And her name Erika? I was like, okay. I was like, let me peep. Let me peep game. And so I ended up first just signing up. I think I started with first just like a coaching session or a coaching package. And there were two kind of things that I was trying to figure out. Like, what's my investor strategy? Because, I want to continue to grow my portfolio, but also for me personally, I had some real estate goals around my mom's house. Yeah. And so when I say around my mom's house,
I am trying to relocate my mom for a variety of different reasons. And so you had helped me kind of think through all of these different steps where I was like, I don't even know where to start with this because my mom's home needs a lot of work. And there's just a lot of domino effects that happen with this of, where if we were to do a renovation, I've never done a renovation and where would she be during the renovation and what are these different scenarios and loan products and where would I get the money for it? And so what I just really appreciated is as someone who values education, who values knowledge building, like you helped me see all the different options of, even from a loan product standpoint, because in my head, I just knew you have to go to the bank and get a mortgage. And that's one way.
That's one way. There's lots of ways.
There's lots of ways. And even going to bank to get a mortgage, that's a specific loan product.
Yes.
And then banks have different loan products.
Yes.
And oftentimes, and this is the thing that's the reality of as you're continuing to grow your income and your worth and you become a high income earner.
Yeah.
Is you have to rely on other people, but it's dangerous to do that without knowledge.
Yes.
So I was having a situation with a particular lender where if I wasn't knowledgeable, they could have taken advantage of my process because they had loopholes in their process. So to be able to come to you and be like,
does this sound right?
This don't sound right, but I don't know what right looks like. And I think that's the thing that I've just learned to like rename that anytime my gut is talking something ain't right, it's like oppression at work. And so it's like whether they trying to move something around or if it's just simply they have gaps in their system and it's showing up in a particular way. But I also know now that I have been in 5-star hotels, I've been in first class and I've been on private islands in the Maldives and I've had those experiences.
Yeah.
People, when they know you got money
and
they know you can be a repeat customer, they treat you very specifically.
They do.
They highly, highly focus on customer service.
Right.
And so even in that standpoint, I was like, something ain't right. So to be able to have someone like you who not only is a real estate investor, but you have experience in multiple types of different investing.
So many types.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing where I was like, girl, you need to do this conference.
You did that too? You did that too? Wait, when you do that? I'm like,
you need to do this. I was like, wait, you've done a flip. You got an apartment building.
Built a house. You've done commercial. We done, all the things.
All the things. And so I say that to say is I think the biggest things that I've got out of our relationship, our coaching relationship is knowledge building, because as someone who is building my investor acumen, I've got to position myself for a lender and a real estate agent to validate what I already know, not rely on them to tell me,
that's good.
What I should know.
That's good.
Which means that I have to have my own bench of expertise that I'm relying on. And you've been a huge part of that bench and even helped me build the bench. So that's been one thing. Absolutely. Love that. I would say also another piece has just been helping my mind just think bigger around options. Like, because I remember even a conversation we were having recently of just trying to figure out the puzzle that is, investing in my hometown. You're like, well, what about a condo? Like, if you, look at condos that have flexible rent restrictions or no rent restrictions, like that could be a way to meet X goal and Y goal. And then the other thing you said to me that I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Of your investment strategy should be built around the lifestyle that you desire.
Yes. And I think that's what makes this community different. Is that I'm not just more so about, okay, yeah, you can buy 5 houses and make $300 a month and you make XYZ. I'm like, no. Reverse engineer. What type of life do you want to live? How do you want to experience it? And then now let's back into what type of investing you need to do. Right.
And I had never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't thought about it that way, I was missing opportunities for the intersection of like investment, but also like for my business. So like, for example, my business does a lot of things in Atlanta.
Yep.
I host all of my events in Atlanta. My mailing address and where I live is in DC.
Yes.
And so if I'm thinking about my real estate investment strategy around my life and building it around a life that I desire, then I need to be investing in Atlanta because I'm paying for Airbnbs and hotels in Atlanta. So why not invest in Atlanta? And then there's so many other branches and benefits that come from that. Of now I'm reducing my expenses in my business. Now I could potentially also have write-offs on the business side and the personal side. And then we ain't even talked about the tax strategy and the tax alleviation that have all of that. And so I've just greatly appreciated all of those things. And I think when you just layer on top of that, the fact that it's a safe space to be able to talk through those things, because in particular, you know, the investment piece that I'm talking through about with my mom, like I wouldn't feel safe talking about that to someone who I didn't feel like could understand or relate, because honestly, what's embedded in a lot of that is some cultural norms around how we view our moms, cultural norms of relationships with moms, cultural norms around how children interact with. So there's just a lot of things that, you know, I could go to someone else and they were, why would you want to do that? And when you could just do that, I didn't have to explain those things. And because I didn't have to, because imagine the emotional burden when you're trying to figure out something, you're trying to grow your income, you're trying to get free, and then you got to explain to somebody stuff.
You know what it's like to have to preempt and explain yourself to people who do not get you.
I didn't have to do none of that where you were like, and there's been times when not only when you were like, I get it, you were like, oh yeah, girl, I had to do the same thing. And so it's like, that was the piece where it was just like, oh my goodness, like it just feels like such a safe space and validates that like, I'm not an outsider when it comes to real estate investment. It's just a matter of, I got to find my tribe and my people. And that's what I found.
That's so good. Thank you. That just warms my heart. Cause that's what we do. That's my heart, my passion, my heartbeat, why I just do this. Okay. So earlier we're talking about family. We're talking about not having to explain ourselves and just feeling seen and accepted in these spaces while building wealth, getting knowledge, lowering that fear. I always tell my clients that, you know, when a fear is a sign that you need to increase your knowledge. It's not a sign that you need to stop or that it's a no. It just means that you need to increase your knowledge. And so we talk about, you know, kind of being this anomaly in some sorts, like you became a principal after 2 years of being a teacher. After 1 year of being a real estate agent, hired a team, which they were like, you're not ready to hire a team. You barely know what you need to do, right? So there's this level of, just this level of like innovation and, what's the word?
We're unicorns.
Unicorns. It's a great word. There's type of uniforms. Like I intentionally moved to the hood on purpose. Black people don't move back to the hood. We don't do that. Most people don't. And it's okay. Not knocking if you don't want to, it's okay. But we don't do that. And so, and my mama was like, you crazy. Black people don't move back to the hood. My mama, when we moved, when we decided that we wanted to move to a low income neighborhood in Atlanta, my mama was like, but you didn't grow up in the hood. What you doing? And so a lot of times when you have a vision and you are working towards something, and a lot of times people don't understand. And with that growth and with that intentionality, it comes, we talk about it all the time, relationships change. What has that been like for you navigating that? Because a lot of people here, a lot of you are going through a place where you don't align with your friends anymore. Your friends may want to go out and party. They may want to spend all their money. They may not want to like grow wealth. They may not want to, go to conferences and do all these things. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I'm still figuring it out for sure. And I think the first step was I had to accept that I changed. Because at the beginning of this year, I remember just tussling with that idea. I was like, but I'm the same Erika. Like, I don't feel like I've changed.
Yeah.
And I had to reframe it and give myself new language to actually embrace the fact that
my values are the same.
Yes.
And how I exercise those values, and it's changed.
Yeah.
Like my preferences have changed. I've evolved. I evolved. And I think that might be a better word, is like I've evolved, right? Because
that's good.
like, I think, you know,
because you can have a negative connotation.
Yeah,
like,
and our community changes.
You think you some, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so part of it is I had to really accept the fact that I evolved, and also, you know, what sense does it make for me to be 37 and to be the same person when I was 27? Like, that makes no sense. It makes no sense, right? So like, there is an expectation that you should have some healthy level of evolution,
right? And
who you are, how you define yourself, how you see yourself, how you're living out your purpose. All those things should evolve over time. And I think part of the experience that has awakened this year, that I've experienced more this year than I have in the past. And I think a lot of it might have to do with, I talk about money publicly because that's a part of my marketing message. That's a part of my brand, you know, what I do through my company, and realizing that I am a reflection of one of two examples for people. I am either a reflection of what you could be and you're inspired.
Yeah.
Or I'm a reflection of what you could have been. And now you, instead of looking inward and wondering, well, what could I still do to be able to package this and hold this as inspiration? Because that might feel too uncomfortable for people, or they may not have the capacity to look inward in that way. They've now actually redirected that level of reflection and critique to me.
Projection.
It's a projection. And so I have had to expect that. I've had to flex my muscle at getting really great at recognizing it, because if you don't recognize it, then you'll take it personal.
Right.
I mean, I've had all the big and small examples of, I remember meeting up with some friends a couple months ago. Someone came to pick me up, and I got in their car, and they said, well, I know this probably isn't as nice as you know, what you're used to. And I was like, where are we going to dinner? Like, I ain't thinking about this. I'm thinking about dinner because I'm hungry. But that was a projection because, you know, it was, whether they had the words to articulate it or not, that was something that activated within them what the value that they have on the things that they've built or experienced, and comparing it to me, right?
Exactly.
And my head isn't even there. And so I think part of it is just realizing and expecting, and what we've had some conversations about, which I now have the language to, and I'm now growing my muscle in, is I have to be prepared for the grief that comes along with that. And I think the complexity of it is like, it's grief of a relationship that is changing, evolving, or you might even lose, and you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. And that's the hard part with grief. I've had a couple relationships that have changed. One that has ended this year, that was someone that was really close to me, and have to go through the grieving process. And, you know, there's different types of grief. You have the grief of someone who is like no longer with us, and you have the grief of people who are with us, but you are no longer in a relationship with them. And it's hard, you know?
It's hard.
And I think for me, the relationships that kind of the biggest shifts that I have had have been for people who we just aren't in the same season of life. And because I'm in a season where I'm taking huge risk that requires a different level of courage and faith. And I have to protect the energy around me in order to make those big strides with courage. And it's really, because I know that God has called me to this. It's bigger than just myself. It's a global impact that I feel like the Lord has called me to. I have to protect the energy that I'm around. And I finally, because I love Jesus and I'm a good Christian, I struggled with that for a long time. I struggled with feeling guilty about not liking everybody, or because I'm nice to everyone, but that doesn't mean everyone has to be my people. And so I have accepted that, and accepted that is a part of this journey. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a little bit different in that I've grown, but I ain't got no problem cutting folks off. I've grown. I don't just be like out here slicing left and right. Like, you done. Like, but I think the after effect of just like almost like some isolation where like that's what I was struggling with, where it's like, okay, I have to reposition all these relationships. And then when I look up, I don't have relationships that I can really lean into. And so that was actually one of the goals that I set at the beginning of this year, because the financial advising team that I work with, they do a holistic assessment where it's like, let's look at all areas of your life.
That's good.
And let's rate where you all in all areas of your life. And at the beginning of the year, I remember stating, I was like, I need more 7 and 8 figure friends. And I'll take some 9 figures too.
Hey.
I need more and it's because, and it's not about the money. It's not about the money.
Exactly.
It's about the fact that I need someone who is going to understand when I have to call and I'm processing the fact that I have to send a cease and desist.
Yes.
Because you've had a similar experience. If you have a 7, 8, 9 figure business, someone has tried to steal your intellectual property.
Yes.
And so not only can you relate, you can slide into a friend. Yes. You can slide into an advisor.
Yes.
You have the capacity and knowledge and wisdom to be able to engage in that conversation.
Right.
And that's what I needed more of like, in whether it's staffing stuff, whether it's payroll, whether it's HR things, like there's just, more complex conversations that I needed to be able to build those relationships to be able to have. And I'll tell you, not only have I felt like I've been able to build that, but when I look back at those relationships that have grown this year, all of them have came as a result of investing in certain programs.
Well, I was going to say,
that's where I met them.
That was my question: is how's it been going this year, and where have you found those people? So talk to me more about that.
So it's what it's been. I believe it's the strategy. If you know another strategy, let me know. But the strategy is you've got to get in the room. Yeah. Because here's the reality. 7, 8, 9 figure entrepreneurs, they're busy. You cannot rely on organic connections.
Because how many times do you get someone DM you and say, Erika, can I pick your brain for coffee? Or, hey, Erika, can you mentor me for free?
Not only does that happen, I get annoyed by that. And let me tell you why I get annoyed by it is, to me, you're asking me to lose money.
Woo!
Like that's how
drop.
That's what I hear.
Drop. I told you that Erika's gonna bring it today.
So that when you're asking me to pick my brain, you're asking me to lose money. And that's what I get annoyed by, because if you saw it that way, you would understand how bad of a request, and I don't know you. Yeah. Like you'll understand how.
If you know me, it's different. But if you know we have a relationship, but if you don't know me, and you know that I charged for the advice that I give, and you still just reach out to me.
And half of y'all would be a no-show.
Right.
So that's why I'm just like...
It shows that you don't... do you really value my advice?
Yeah.
If you did, wouldn't you pay for it?
But part of the piece that I think we should have more conversations about it, because so much of it is a hidden curriculum. It's like, what are the mindset, behaviors, ideology, the psychology of 7, 8, and 9 figure business owners? Yeah. And therefore, how do they meet? Mm-hmm. They meet through people and or in rooms. Yes. Because they don't, it's all about where you positioning yourself in order to meet these people. You're not going to meet them at the movie theater. You're not going to meet them at Starbucks, because that's not where they are. Right. Where they are is they are in places to help advance and grow themselves. Yes. So they are at the private exclusive conferences. Yes. They're in the private exclusive dinners hosted by X and Y people.
Yes. They're in masterminds.
They're in masterminds. They're, the friends of certain people. And so part of that is if you understand that psychology and what this stage of business requires you to do and how you have to move, then you'll understand I just can't expect to meet my new 7, 8, 9 figure friend at someone's birthday party. Like that's not.
I'm not going to be there.
I will send you a card.
If it's a kid's birthday party, I'm probably not going to be there.
Listen, because
my kids.
And you know how I travel. I'm like, if you don't let me know 6 months in advance, I probably am not going to be there.
Exactly.
And so, so I think a huge part of it, and I think this is why, and there's another part of the ideology going back to this conversation of, the mastermind and all those pieces is, if I don't know something, I'm just going to pay somebody to teach me.
Right. I'm not going to sit here and just...
I'm not Googling. I'm not YouTubing. Right. I will lose money to attempt to try and figure it out on my own. I will pay someone, which will actually not only make my money back, but help me make it faster. That's how we think, which is why we end up meeting each other.
Right.
It's because we're all thinking the same way. If I am a novice investor, I'm not going to try and read all the books and go to YouTube. I'm going to pay someone who's done it before to teach me and to help me see all the landmines. And that's how I'm going to meet other 7, 8, 9 figure investors is because they follow the same type of learning philosophy. Yep. So y'all got to get in the rooms and stop trying to be on Zoom. Stop trying to watch the replay. Your transformation is not in the replay. No. Your transformation is not on the IG Live. Your transformation is in the 4, 5, 6 figure investment that you have to make to get in the room.
Wow. Well, well, guys, that's amazing. I'm speechless. Because you hit it. Any other final advice? I mean, you dropped so many gems today. Thank you so much for being here. Any other final advice for the people out there who are trying to figure out, man, what is my 2 next steps? What should I do? What should they do today?
So I would say the first next steps is you just have to reframe why you don't know something. So what I mean by that is we live in a racist, patriarchal, misogynist, all the other stuff country that intentionally suppresses stories of hope for people who are not white men. Right? So when you think of entrepreneurship, you probably think of Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. Right. That is not a coincidence, right? Even though there's Sheila Johnson. Yes. Even though there's Janice Howard Bryant. Like there are lots of other, Don Peebles. There are lots of people who are not white men who are generating wealth, but their stories are often suppressed. And so it is not a coincidence that you are thinking that real estate is really hard and that you can't see yourself as a real estate investor. That's not a coincidence. That's actually intentional. It's a strategy. Because it's a strategy because the more you doubt your ability to be a real estate investor, the more the current power structures will stay in place. And thrive. So that's the first thing is you have to actually see your lack of knowledge of that's actually the way oppression moves. And the way to get it to move differently is my second step is you've got to get proximate to someone who's a reflection that it can be done. Someone like Erika. And so if you're just like, I have this desire, I don't know what it looks like, then that is a sign for you that it's time to actually make a decision to actually get proximate to the actual reflection of what you're trying to do because it's absolutely possible. Right. It's just a matter of you going out to find it and making the decision to move forward and say yes.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. All right, guys. I will see you guys on another episode of Wealth Within Reach. Have a good day.